In the last example, we looked at solving sin x equals negative 0.5, and we found that we had solutions past 180 and backwards from 360. This would be the same for solving an equation with cos x equals negative 0.5. You would have different solutions to having cos x of a positive value, and also the same with tan. So we have to have some kind of memory aid to help us deal with all these different situations, going backwards from 180, going forwards from 180, going backwards from 360, and so on with our base angle. So to develop this further, we have to look at this diagram. Now this diagram talks about all the different quadrants there are in the sine wave, the cosine wave, and the tan graph. Now the first quadrant, when we talk about that, we're talking about between 0 and 90 degrees on a graph. Back here, that would be this bit, 0 to 90, that would be your first quadrant, which means your second quadrant would be this part here, 90 to 180, your third quadrant 180 to 270, and your final quadrant 270 to 360, that would be your fourth quadrant. So looking again at this diagram, in the first quadrant, looking at the three graphs, you've got the sine wave, the cosine wave, and the tan graph. You can see that each one is positive, i.e. the sine wave has values between 0 and 1 in the first quadrant. The cosine wave has values between 0 and 1, and the tan graph, its values are all positive, going up like this. So every graph has positive values in the first quadrant. In the second quadrant, between 90 and 180, that's why you have a 90 up here and a 180 down here, only the sine graph, or the sine wave, is positive. If you look at the cosine wave, there's negative values between 0 and negative 1. And also the tan graph has values less than 0, if that's your 0 line across there. There's negative values here, so only the sine wave is positive in this quadrant, which is important. In your third quadrant, between 180 and 270, that's again why we've got this here. If you look at all the graphs, if you look at the first one, the sine wave is negative here, between 0 and negative 1. That's your values between 0 and negative 1. The cosine wave is also negative. That's between 0 and negative 1 here, down this bit. But the tan graph is positive. It's got values going up like this. So only the tan graph is positive in this quadrant. In the final quadrant, the fourth position, this is between 270 and 360. If we look at the graphs, the sine wave is negative, the cosine wave is positive, and the tan is negative. So only the cosine wave is positive at this point. And that will help us later on to solve trickier equations. We simplify this down to all sine tan cos, all meaning all the graphs are positive between 0 and 90. Sine meaning only the sine is positive and the other two are negative between 90 and 180. The tan meaning that only the tan graph is positive, sine cos are negative here. And cos meaning only the cosine wave is positive between 270 and 360, the rest are negative. And we shorten this again to ASTC, all sine tan cos, kind of going in an anti-clockwise manner. Now, you might be wondering what we have done all this for. Well, this is really a memory aid to work out what to do in the graphs to solve the equations, to go backwards from 180, to go forwards from 180, to go back from 360, and so on. And in the next video, I'll show you how to use this to actually do some calculations.